I have the data you asked for.
Thanks, Fib. Oh, hello there. Welcome to the Nerdy Photographer Podcast. I'm your host, Casey Fatchett. If you've never listened to the show before, welcome. In addition to providing entertaining and informative photography-related information, I also go on adventures with the crew of the Starship Fibonacci. While you're here, be sure to subscribe to the show and maybe share it with a photographer friend of yours. If you're a repeat listener, you know the deal, but you could stand to leave a review if you haven't already. At the moment, Fib and I are crunching the numbers on why our safety messaging is not reaching certain star systems in this sector.
It appears that not everyone is using the same communication platform.
Put it on the big board, Fib. I forgot my glasses. Interesting. It seems they're trending towards newer communication platforms. Speaking of trends, on this episode, I talk with wedding photographer Adam Mason about recent trends in photography bookings and how you should be trying to reach new potential clients. All of that after the break. What do these symbols mean, Fib?
These symbolize various communications platforms in this sector.
Yeah, but one of them is a clock. Who uses a clock to communicate? Hey, photographers, are you tired of using the same stale poses with your clients, resulting in stiff and unnatural photos? Consider using Let's Be Real prompts instead. Prompts are not just a list of poses. They're designed to help you create a more engaging, fun environment for your photo subjects, resulting in more natural and authentic images. With the Nerdy Photographer's Let's Be Real prompts, you'll have a unique set of prompts for couples, weddings, families, and individuals, ensuring that you never run out of ideas. Prompts are particularly helpful for clients who are nervous or self-conscious about having their picture taken. By giving them something else to focus on, they can become more relaxed and their reactions will be more authentic and less guarded. Using Let's Be Real prompts will not only help you create more fresh and dynamic images, but it will also increase your confidence and your client's confidence in you. You'll be able to handle difficult situations and subjects with ease, resulting in more satisfied clients and a stronger photography business. So start using Let's Be Real prompts from the Nerdy Photographer today and elevate your photography to the next level. Go to nerdyphotographer.com and go to our store, or click the link in the episode notes and get started creating authentic, engaging images today. Hello, and welcome to the Nerdy Photographer Podcast. I'm your host, Casey Fatchett, and with me today is wedding photographer Adam Mason. Adam, welcome to the show.
Excited to be here. Thanks for having me, Casey.
Oh, you're absolutely welcome. And before we get started, we're going to roll the dice breaker, and it's a 9. Who would you invite to, you can have a dinner party, anybody, living or dead, can attend. Who are you inviting?
Oh, man. How large is this dinner party?
I mean, keep it reasonable. You're going to have, you want to have conversation. You don't want to be too big.
Okay, we'll go.
Like a handful.
Yeah, 4 to 6 people is like what I was thinking. Okay. Living or dead. Oh my gosh. Oh yeah. I'm going to have, this is going to be so niche. But then again, we just rolled the dice to come up with a question, so I love it. I'm going to invite one of the guitarists from a band named Killswitch Engage, Adam Duckiewicz. I can't even say his name, but his name is Adam as well. We're going to invite Tom Hardy. We're going to invite Jeff Daniels.
Either of those Jeffs I'm happy with.
Yeah. From the newsroom, but also recently, I mean, he's going viral and from Kelly Clarkson. He's a great guitar player. I saw him.
He's from Michigan, which is where I'm from.
Okay.
And he did this beautiful ode to the Detroit Lions. The wrote is called the Silver and Honolulu Blues.
Okay.
Which is all about like the misery that we went through as Lions fans for, for 50, 60 years now.
Yeah. Pre-Dan Campbell. Yeah.
Yes. Pre-Dan Campbell era.
Exactly. So Jeff Daniels, he's incredible. Trying to think of other people I'd want at this dinner party that I think are cool. I'm going to go selfish actually. And I'll say, Adam Sandler. I think it'd be hilarious. And then this is becoming a dude fest, and so I have to change it up a little bit. We'll go Dua Lipa, just for fun. She can sing if she wants. She doesn't have to. I think she'd be an interesting chat. And then Dolly Parton.
Oh,
So
Dolly, Dolly, is yeah, she's an incredible business person as well as
yeah,
uh, an amazing artist. Like that I would love to pick her brain for
yeah,
like an hour or however long she'd allow.
yeah.
Um, that's a good group, man. Like what would you? How would you start that discussion off? Like how would you like the night? Like what topic would you choose to discuss first?
Yeah, I mean, most of those people are pretty successful, and so at some level, I think there's still things I want to know, in life, and so I'd ask them kind of maybe what frictions do they still have in their lives despite their success,
Hmm.
and how are they solving them, and then which ones are they, which tensions, if they still have them, are they kind of living in that tension or friction with, right? So like I know there's lots of super famous people who, hey, they're still walking their kids to school,
Yeah,
right? Or they're still driving their kids to school. And Jimmy Kimmel has a bit about this, but it's like, oh, that guy he could probably pay somebody to take his kids to school, but he doesn't want to, right? We still have these like human values. And so I'm a newish dad. I have a 2-year-old, and just kind of curious about those kinds of things. Like, hey, sure, you don't have to worry about where your next check is coming from or your next meal's coming from, but you still have life to live, and if you have kids and relationships and partners and all that stuff, that's probably where I'd start.
interesting. I think
Yeah,
I mean, like, what are still the things that you're willing to deal with
yeah,
that are not necessarily it's not so terrible that you're passing it off to somebody else. And yeah, all those the little things. I think
yeah.
that's a very interesting
Because
topic.
some of those we'd probably say would be unhealthy to escape, right? Like, hey, you should
Right.
probably just spend some time with your kid,
Right.
or hey, spend some time with XYZ, or whatever. Are you in therapy, religious, meditation, working out? What does that look like? Do you have any hobbies outside of the success, right? Because you no longer have to do whatever it is you do to make money per se. You have you've reached the end goal,
Right.
and assumedly there's nothing more you want. So the value set is different. So what does life look like within that value set? Ironically, where they're just as common as us, right? Like,
Yeah.
got to clean the house, go
They're
take the
real people.
yeah, yeah. So that's what I probably asked. It's kind of fun and
I don't know.
a little
And I
nerdy.
know Tom Hardy would probably say judo, or does he do
Yeah,
judo or jujitsu? I can't remember. I think
yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
judo. Um, yeah, he's really into the martial arts.
Hmm.
Um, wow, yeah, like I think about that. Like I've done a lot of like celebrity events where there are a lot of people like
Yeah,
celebrities there, and it really is that thing. Like people don't understand. Like they say like, oh, what was it like? Whatever. And I'm like, they're humans, and they
yeah,
deal with every like other human thing. Like 98% of the stuff is the same. It's just that they're that 2% is people wanting to screaming at them to like look at the camera, or like the money part of it, whatever. But like a lot of it is just human interaction. It's just
yeah,
no different from anyone else. Like I always try to find the most random thing I can think of to like say, oh, you were great in,
yeah, yeah,
because that always shows like, oh, it's something like you really have to be paying attention to their career to know that they were in something,
yeah.
or did this thing, and I found that always like really breaks any sort of tension, and they're just gonna go like I did an event like Salman Rushdie was there. This was before he lost his
Mm.
eye recently, and I was like, oh, I loved you in Seinfeld, and he cracked up, and like all the VIPs were there to like have their picture taken with him. Were like, huh, what's going on? Like, but it made him really relax so that he could have his picture taken with the VIPs.
Yeah. No, I think I've shot not as many celebrity sightings as you, but I've done a few, and that's the ticket is I loved you in XYZ, or just ask them if you know one of their obscure hobbies or something.
Yeah,
Like I think now, especially in the age of podcasts, which I love, you're getting to see that human side of what do you collect or what are you into, and or what do you wish, what would you have done if you weren't a celebrity or weren't an actor, and that's always fun. And at least for photography, you know, so many people I'd see have a Leica, or so many people have, a camera that I could just ask about, or I'd be like, hey, even something as dumb as like, how are you liking the new iPhone? Do you think it's going to be good in the night?
I think that's great. I think that like that would have to be like in a moment where there's like something. I feel like I see like a big like red carpet moment
Yeah.
where everybody's just like screaming at them or whatever, and you just turn and like, so what do you think of the new iPhone?
Yeah. Well, dude, that's the one celebrity. I used to shoot this charity gala every year, and for some reason, I would volunteer. I wasn't even getting paid, but I liked the charity, and they were like, "Hey, why don't you shoot the red carpet?" And I was like, that's not. I'm not good at that. Like, I don't even do direct flash. I'm not." And this is like 10 years ago, so I was like, "I'm really just good at the event. Like, I'm going to get
Yeah.
people laughing and having a good time." And they're like, "No, let's get you on the red carpet. I think that'd be cool." And I mean, if nobody knows, I didn't know this until I did this, but it's like those press lines.
Yeah.
Every photographer and interviewer is yelling who they work for, right?
Right.
Us Weekly, Newsweek, Time, AT, all this stuff.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know. And luckily, a photographer told me, he's like, "Hey, when somebody comes up, you just yell house, and they'll come to you because they're here for the event." And
Right.
so I was like, "Oh, so I just yell house, okay?" So I'm just yelling house, like as if I know what I'm doing.
And Hugh Laurie was there.
Yeah, because because it was a charity thing. All of these people, none of them wanted to go to the big outlets. They all came up to me. And some people I didn't know. I had a list with like photos of those people, of the guests. And just the conversation was like so normal and so weird. And it was in New York City, so I'd always be like, "How was the drive?" It was just like very city, kind of silly things, and it's so fun. And then it kind of removes the mystique. And then if you're cool, they're not freaked out by you.
Right.
They're not nervous about you.
It's all about making people. Hey, listen, it's the same as like shooting a wedding, in my opinion. Like you're trying to make people feel comfortable with your presence,
Yeah,
and like make them feel like they don't have to worry about you taking a bad picture of them.
yeah.
That's
No,
success. I think that's success. Speaking of success, the whole reason you came on the show was to talk about like
failure. No, I was kidding.
how to fail. No, we were going to talk about the things have changed in the wedding industry, and I'd say in
Yeah.
the last 5 years, like significantly in the way that couples are booking.
Yeah.
And to be successful as a wedding photographer or as any kind of photographer, honestly, you need to book people. You need to
Yeah.
get people to hire you. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And what significant trends have you observed as far as wedding photography bookings, and how has this influenced your approach to marketing yourself, or like what you tell other wedding photographers they should do
Yeah.
when it comes to telling people about their business?
No, absolutely. So, I mean, I used to host a podcast called The Bearded Tog, and a lot of it was kind of like conversations like this, where it's a little bit more down to earth approach, and kind of, hey, we're all going through it, right? It wasn't, because there's a lot of educators who stop doing the thing, right? And then
Right.
they educate on the thing, and I've always not been into that. And so, but at the time, lots of photographers I talked to, and even myself, I've been shooting since 2011, full time since 2015. In a high end market, DC and Philly and the East Coast, and trend wise for me, well, first I'd always tell people my biggest advice for myself and other people was to have, you'll never regret having the largest kind of outreach you possibly can. The top of the funnel, if you will, if you're like a salesperson, to where how many people know about you, how many people need a wedding photographer, and then how many people need a wedding photographer like you, and then how many people have the money to pay what you're charging, that kind of thing, and are you available for their date, right? Like that little funnel going all the way down. And so it'd never be a waste, but I think a lot of us would have, I almost was like in the old school way of business where I'd go to like a networking meeting every week, and people thought I did headshots and I didn't, and they would be like, "Hey, will you do our headshot?" And I'd be like, "No, but if you're getting married, let me know." Or I'd be like, "I'll do your headshot at a wedding. Here's my wedding price," and then we'll just go.
Hire me to do the wedding, and I'll throw in the headshot for free.
Exactly. And honestly, I at that time, that was kind of the big thing, right? Referrals. But over the last 10 years, what I've seen, Instagram was like, I feel like the number one for a lot of people. If you had like a kind of a more niche style, if you will, at least in the wedding world, that's all I could say. And so, and that was kind of the advice was that it was working for a lot of people. It's where a lot of couples were searching for their photographers. I think over the last 5 years, that has shifted. Pinterest kind of got really, really big and is kind of shifting as well. And honestly, the big dog in the house right now is TikTok. Oh, and I'll have to say, like, we used to have Facebook pages, and now
Yeah.
most of us, it's an afterthought.
There was like 3 years where like you ran a Facebook ad, you could book yourself for the entire year.
Yeah,
Like,
100%.
and like if you, because most people weren't doing it, and if you had a decently targeted Facebook ad, you could get enough inquiries for like to book you pretty much for the year if you spent like $200.
Yeah, yeah. It's literally like a one of those things where it's where's your audience at, which is such a dumb, weird question that I wish we didn't have to worry about. As
Yeah.
photographers, it's like our expertise is taking pictures, but it's like hopefully we're becoming good at running a business and generating income and treating clients well. And so I think like the big dog nowadays is TikTok. And this is none of this is like the political you in the US are thinking of getting it banned or divested or whatever, but it's like it's primarily a pretty enjoyable place to be. Like at least for me, I think
Yeah.
I
You
think a lot of
you create your own vibe there,
you
and
get a lot of entertainment.
there's a
Uh,
lot.
yeah, it's pretty fun, and I think I've seen the ability for all kinds of creators, not just photographers, to get a large audience or to get at least a little bit of notoriety, to where it sticks in your head, right? Like we all have like a favorite meme or maybe 10 favorite memes in our head that some might be from a TikTok kind of place. And then I've seen photographers, like the number one I think of is Brandy Potter actually.
Yeah,
And I think
she's got a huge following, and she's
yeah,
nailed like what she's trying to do.
yeah, like yeah, exactly what I would say is she knows she found what works. And the thing is too, this is gonna make photographers feel bad, but it's like Brandy is also an incredible photographer. Like I've been following Brandy for a long time. She was one of my heroes. And then ironically, like now we've like I don't know if we're online friends, but I like her. I think she's cool. I've subscribed to her Patreon, and kind of get to learn from her a little bit. But her and then Margaret Wroblewski, who's one of my mentees and used to second shoot for me, also huge in kind of the film, very like European style wedding photography, and both those amazing photographers found a good niche. I think they were there early before
Yeah.
people, because that's the thing too. It's like fishing,
Before
right?
algorithms change.
Yeah, nobody likes fishing until you catch a fish, and you're like, "Oh, I'd like to have a fish as well. Okay, I guess I'll do this." But before that, we all thought it was dancing, right? And it's just that I feel like that's a lot of our own fault. And it's like, hey, maybe we should give a deeper look to certain things for a while. And
Yeah. My wife was like, "You need to get on TikTok," and I was like, what am I going to do on TikTok? And how am I going to show off my images? Or and she's like, "You're not going to show off your images. You're going to show off you." But she works in marketing and
Okay.
and communications, so she's ahead of things usually. And I was like, and then I finally joined, and I did pretty well for a while, and then they changed the algorithm again, and it's like now it's like I'm trying to get more than 300 views on a video.
Yeah. Yeah. It's such a weird, weird problem to solve, egg to crack, if you will. But I feel like that is now the trend. And those people, they're, if anything, it's opening opportunities for them. I feel like where hey, you have this large audience, TikTok, its job is to show people who hopefully will like your stuff, right? And in an ideal world, that all works out and a few things catch, and it's just really cool. Like I know Brandy is getting tons of bookings from it and feels really comfortable, I think, at some level with it. And I think that's amazing. And then there's the rest of us who are maybe trying or I'll see a boudoir photographer on TikTok every once in a while, and I feel bad because I'm like, oh, they can't really show what they do, but a lot of it is like humor around the poses or something like that. Okay, that's fun. That's cool.
And I mean, I've been on there for a while now. Like I joined later, but I decided like that this like the nerdy photographer was going to be like my niche on. It wasn't going to be trying to sell my photography, and like
Yeah.
I occasionally share some of that because like remind people like this is actually what I do. And sometimes I've had people contact me about getting hired. That's great. Um, but I found that my style of talking to photographers is on TikTok is better than trying to because your audience is something like Brandy's very very good at
Yeah.
is talking to her audience, like the people she's trying to reach, in a way that fits the medium
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
not like it's not salesy,
Right.
because that is the thing. Like as soon as a consumer of TikTok videos, the second somebody's trying to sell me something, I'm like, goodbye. Unless it's like something that I immediately in 2 seconds know that I'm interested in anyway.
Right.
Like it's always like a TikTok shop thing. Like, oh, actually, I do want that manual, like that light meter that I can put on my film camera. That'd be great. Just got that yesterday.
Well,
Um, but yeah, there's for me, I was like, I can like the short form humorous videos are something I've pat myself on the back, but I feel like I'm fairly good at. And yeah, I felt like that lended itself more to this brand that I operate as opposed
mm,
to my photography brand. If that makes sense.
yeah. Well, I think that's the thing too is we're getting really deep already here, but I think find something that works for you. For me, Instagram was big for me. And I think I was looking at my stats and it's gone down the last few years, I feel like, because of TikTok. And then, I haven't been posting as much, but we've done, six figures from Instagram, each year for the last 3 years. And that's wild, and
Yeah.
that's like, that's if you know what your referral sources are, you need to, butter those up and make sure they're doing it right. And at the same time, not put all your eggs in one basket, right? So I'm a big referral network guy to where I still think venues, being on a venue list is like prime real estate. If possible,
Yeah.
if you're a wedding person.
It's like the
Uh,
first place that people like they're booking the venue first.
yeah,
And
yeah.
then that's
Unless you're
always
like,
been a thing. Like,
yeah, unless you're sometimes, and most photographers this happens maybe once or twice a year. You'll get an inquiry that's like, "Hey, we want you. When are you available? We'll find a
we'll
date that
find a
works."
date that works. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which isn't, yeah, not common, but it happens.
Yeah, no, 100%. And so I think, wedding venue is always going to be top dog, especially I always think of it as like a food chain,
Yeah.
but it probably should just be like a hiring order. And then, planner, obviously you want to be on their good sides. Ironically though, recently, um, at least in DC, Philly, New York, I feel like there's some hair and makeup artists that just have an elite level of
Yeah.
power, uh,
Yes.
which I like, and they're really good. And I've gotten two weddings from one makeup artist this year, and I'm like, okay, well, I have to send you something because this is, thank you so much. You didn't have to do this at all, and I hopefully can make your work look good, and hopefully I'm bringing you business. So that's been pretty cool. But I think after that, you think about your social channels, you think about your local areas if you want to, depending on where you live, chamber of commerce, that kind of stuff. And it's other than that, it's like rising tide, networking, a speakeasy, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I
Whip
mean,
up.
I think that like people need to understand, like when it comes to those things like networking, like with a venue or a planner or a makeup artist. I too have had a couple of weddings referred by makeup artists. Um, yeah, I think it's because of the way they can talk to anybody, and they come in for a makeup trial, and they'll just
Mm,
be like, "Oh, you haven't found a photographer yet? Oh, you should call
yeah,
Casey." Like, and they're having conversations. But those sorts of network things, I think what most people kind of fail to realize, like the main mistake that people make when they're trying to network with someone, is just thinking that all I need to do for this person is give them my contact information and we're going to
mm,
refer each other back and forth. That's it. That's the extent of the relationship. It's not like you have to do things like it's a mutually beneficial relationship, because I've found that like the venues that refer me, the planners that refer me, the makeup artists that refer me, are the ones who I am doing something for, and it's not always on the wedding day. Like it's not just the like, oh, here's the pictures that I took at this wedding, whatever. It's with planners helping out with like, oh, we've got new team members. Let's talk about like what happens during the portraits, or
Yeah.
like let's have a little 1 hour seminar via Zoom or whatever where we can talk with the team and talk about like the different styles of photography to kind of like educate them a little bit more on those sorts of things. And like that's how you build a strong relationship, not just by like giving them photos that they use because they do need photos. Um, but how are you setting yourself apart from other photographers who are
Right.
also giving them photos?
Yeah.
Um,
And I think too, I don't want to reveal anything. We just met, but like for me, I'm 35. Every weekend, it's so nice when I go in and I'm working with vendors I know, or
yeah,
you do an event monthly or something corporate, and you're like, it's so nice to see you again. Like
yeah,
this is something that I can sleep at night and you don't stress me out. Thank you for being you, you know?
yeah. It's like that comfort, like what I always tell couples, because and I'm sure you get this too. Like couples will book or whatever, or they're just like talking to you about their planning process, and they'll say, "Do you know a good florist?" Or "Do you know a
Yeah.
good makeup artist?" Or "Do you know, like a band that like does this type of like music or whatever?"
Right.
That and I always tell them like I am only going to recommend people to you who I have worked with, who I believe are professional, and
Yeah.
who I like to work with.
Right. You can
Like
vouch for. Yeah.
yeah, and like I can vouch for them as like it's they're a pleasure to work with,
Mhm.
and because I don't want to recommend somebody who I hate working with, like
Yeah.
it's somebody who's just like mean or like has a bad attitude, that doesn't fit who I am. But that's yeah, I think that is instead of having like because I've had people contact me about like, oh, if you refer us, we'll give you a kickback or whatever percentage of any referrals making. I'm like, I would rather refer people who I know are good
Yeah.
than just some random person who's gonna like give me 5 or 10% just because I referred them.
Right.
Um, because I'm putting my name on it by referring you.
Yeah. No, 100%. I mean, I like it and I hate it because it's like at some level connections are important, right? It's not just the best talent going to the top at some level.
Yeah,
Also, it's because our industry, there's so many talented people. I know, like in DC, Philly, New York, uh, you could throw a rock and everybody is good. Everybody is solid. And then you have to choose based on your niche, desire, looks, communication, etc. And then the connection as well. And so it's like, you know, we're you'd be totally fine with almost anybody at a base level. But if you're looking for something more niche, this is what we can do. And yeah, I think that the connections and just the attitude and that's for me one of my biggest developments is like over the last 10 years is 10 years ago I was shooting to impress photographers. I
yeah,
wanted to make photos and now my highest budget things ever wouldn't impress photographers at all, right? They're impressing couples, they're impressing marketing directors, comms directors, advertising teams. And it's like, oh, okay, this is who I want to impress. This
yeah,
is who I'm looking for.
yeah. Actually, Myron and I just had, Myron Fields and I just had a conversation about this recently on one of our episode, a few episodes ago. At this point, when this comes out, we're talking about like a lot of photographers get into the business and then they start posting stuff for other photographers. Like
Mm,
this is a shot that's going to impress another photographer
yep.
because they're going to get feed. They know they're going to get feedback.
Yeah.
They know that like photographers will answer that, which is why I separated, my photography business from the podcast and all the stuff because there's stuff for photographers and then there's my stuff for clients. They're two different brands.
Right.
Um, and like there's just some comfort there when you're starting out, especially that of knowing like, oh, other people get what I'm going through, and like this is the thing that I'm trying. But I have seen a trend recently in, especially amongst wedding photographers, but people like complaining about clients on social media,
Mm,
and I'm like, this is not like if you want to get hired,
yeah.
this is not the airing of this is not Festivus. This is not the time for the airing of grievances.
because it just makes you look like, you know, I don't know, that you're judging your clients,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
people who are going to hire you are not looking for that.
Yeah.
Kind of,
Especially in the luxury space,
yeah,
right? Like I think that's something I didn't really grow up in a luxury situation by any means. But I think it's like the just the attitude approach, right? Like, are you punching down or are you punching on to a lot of our clients have no idea what goes into this. It's their first time getting married and hopefully
yeah,
their only time. And it's like that's going to be such a different outlook than other people, would understand. And I think you got to have some grace. Like
yeah,
it's not about, you know.
yeah. Well, it's like my wife will always say, like, you've done this hundreds of times. They
Yeah.
have not.
Yep.
And yeah, and I'm like, yeah, I'm trying to explain to them like how this is gonna, like, I'm trying to educate in a positive manner, as opposed to like going like, geez, these people don't know. Like that's what I've been seeing a lot more of, where like,
Mhm.
there are people like, oh, God, these people who want this and they just don't understand. They're like getting really aggressive with like talking about their clients. It's like, that your clients are might be following you on this social media platform because
Yeah,
it's your photography business's social media platform,
absolutely.
and that's just not a good look. Um, Getting back to like TikTok and social media, like Reels changed the way that Instagram
Yeah.
works, and I think that it's because they were trying to like get some of that TikTok
Yep. Yep.
shine on them. Um,
Uh-huh.
the way that I've seen, and you can tell me if you've experienced differently.
Yeah.
My experience from this has been that people are finding photographers a lot more like instead of like there used to be a lot of stuff from blogs or like, and a
Mhm.
lot of those have just disappeared. Um, or wherever they're finding through actually like searching, like
Yeah.
Google searching things or whatever, or maybe somebody recommends you or whatever. But their next step is then to go to your social media to get a sense of who you are.
Yeah.
That is what the social media is like. It's not just about posting pretty pictures, whatever. It's to get a sense of your personality, because they don't want to like they want to kind of know who you like, get a feel for what you're bringing on the wedding day, not
Yeah.
just like, oh, okay, this is like, oh, great pictures, but what else have you got? Because I'm going to be
Right.
around you for 8, 10, 12 hours. Like, who are you, and what do I have to expect in this process where I'm going to be dealing with you for months and months, you
Yeah.
know, back and forth.
Yeah. Absolutely. There's a lot of trust and just, um, yeah, I think that's what Instagram was doing for a little bit, and TikTok just does a better job. It's a platform that's more geared towards getting to know somebody if they want to get to be known, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Like Brandy, like you could tell we know a certain you can know enough about her from what she shares, that she is a professional and she has good work and etc. And that she's shooting for a different kind of couple and all this stuff. Um, and so if you're that kind of couple, then Randy feels like the person, right?
right.
Like that's the idea is like you come away from it being like, oh, at first I just thought I wanted a car. I just needed something to get me from A to B. And you're like, no, I need a Honda Civic EX, SI turbo, etc. And that's the only car for me, right? So then your niche is like so much further down. Um,
Yeah, I think that it allows people to have a peek behind the camera and see who the person is. And I think that's where some of those growing pains are for a lot of photographers. It's like we got in this to like hide behind the camera, and there's a sense of like, oh, why do I have to like sell myself? And it's like what I've come to terms with as someone who does not like being in front of the camera is that you are not there to necessarily sell who you are, but to show the aspects of yourself
yeah,
which will attract the couple that you want to hire you.
no,
Like, you don't have to be like constantly going like, "Hey, everybody, hire me!" Ah. Like I said before, like once you do that on TikTok, like people are moved on to the next video.
yeah,
The second you're trying to like just like, "Hey, you should go to my profile and click on the link there and go to my website," and check, like, nope, nobody's doing that.
Yeah.
That's just not going to happen unless they've started to follow you and they've seen you like 18 times and they're like, oh, let's go and do that. Like unless they've bought into who you are
Yeah.
already, they're not doing that. You're not going to get them on like the first time they see one of your videos and going like, hey, I'm a wedding photographer in your neighborhood. Hire me. That's not gonna garner the results that you're probably hoping for.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's that's the number one thing I feel like every wedding photographer hears is like, you know, despite what we actually do to get to our work, is like, oh, it feels so authentic. It feels, your stuff is very candid, etc. moments, all that kind of stuff. And it's like clients believe that it comes from a certain type of person. Um, and yeah, it's like as you niche down and kind of can show what that is, you want to keep that authenticity, right? And it's like we unfollow and follow people all the time, I bet, who we're like, oh, okay, yeah, this is cool. And then you're like, oh, this person is more than I thought, per se. Right? They've got another facet of their personality that you're like, oh, that's it's not really my thing or whatever. And maybe you unfollow or you're thinking about them less, right? It's I hate to break it to everybody, but it's kind of like dating, right?
It is.
Um, and we all have our Tinder profiles extra public and photos of us, and videos of us, and but that's the name of the game, like you said, right? Because it's a luxury industry, it's a privilege to be in, and it's important, and it's something that you know, there's a finite number of those happening every year worldwide, and we get to be a part of it. So it's like this is what we have to do to provide, and I'd rather do that than have an office job. So
Same here. I was tired of working for other people.
yeah,
So, what do you think the big influences are behind this trend towards people paying more attention to TikTok and like other social media platforms? You've I keep bringing up Reels because I feel like it's almost like TikTok light. Um, it's an attempt to like do the same thing, and I have seen like some things work differently on different platforms.
yeah,
Like it depends on what you're talking about. You can talk about different topics on Instagram and have it do very well
yeah,
versus what you talk about on TikTok. I'm have not figured out what it is, but like there's like certain things like I've done videos that got 100,000 views on Instagram that didn't do anything on TikTok, and I've
mm,
done videos that did like 500 views on Instagram but got 325,000 views on TikTok. And I'm like,
wow,
and it's just like, okay, well, what is it about this
yeah,
that is different, like between the two platforms? And I'm like, is it just the algorithm and who gets to see it, or like
sure,
how things are different there? But like, part of me wonders why we've switched to this sort of like, I don't know, like this different sort of research to
yeah,
find your wedding photographer or your photographer, whatever they're hiring you for, photography wise, or like how are they trying to find you? Like this, there's been a shift. Like you said, like in the last, I mean, I put it at like 2019 because I was starting to see in 2019 people didn't want to come in for meetings anymore.
yeah, yeah,
They just they would schedule a meeting and then they wouldn't come in, or they started saying like, oh, can we just do a phone call, or can we just do like some sort of, like televisit, because they're working, they like going out of their way after work to come in for a meeting was just felt like a lot of effort for them.
mm,
So I was like, I'm gonna like, and this was I little lucky in that I started doing this beforehand, and I also like canceled my meeting space because I was just like, last 3 months, like nobody's coming for a meeting. Why am I like, my lease was up and I was like, I'm not going to renew this. If I needed a space, I will rent a space as needed. And, otherwise I had already just been doing like, you know, uh, video conference calls with people, leading up to that. And then the pandemic hit and people really weren't coming in for meetings then. Um, but I wonder if like, there was already this sort of like shift in how people were researching their wedding vendors
yeah,
before the pandemic, and then the pandemic happened and like it completely changed everything. like how people were like dealing. We like the Zoom call is just like is you know ubiquitous at this point. Like it's like like everybody now. I'm getting like people are going like, oh man, I hate being on Zoom calls because I'm on Zoom calls all day.
Yep.
And this is like, oh, 5 years ago, this was not a thing. Um, but so like trying to find some way to make even video calls like a little more engaging to
Mhm.
people is now becoming a thing.
Right.
But do you see like any other sort of influences behind this trend towards like like people wanting to do their research online before they even really engage, or like, what have you seen?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just really where we're at as consumers, like I think for all of us, I'm not at the point where I've bought anything off of TikTok Shop yet. Um, and a lot, it's probably 99.9% waste and stuff that I would never be into. But on Instagram, I've definitely gotten targeted ads where I'm like, okay, I would buy that. This is cool.
It's
You know,
listening to you. That's why.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a wallet or whatever. Um, and I think for TikTok, um, it's just the fastest way. Oftentimes I'm in TikTok, and the way that I share videos and stuff after I've seen them, it reminds me of the olden days of when uh not even sharing a meme on Instagram or a photo that we thought was cool. But back in the day, we'd watch a YouTube video and you'd be like,
Yeah.
oh, this was hilarious. Or hey, did you see this crazy, fishing trip or whatever?
Yeah.
And
Something. It's like
yeah,
America's Funniest Home Videos meets like, you know, the dawn of YouTube versus and like all of these other things kind of all rolled into one.
yeah, it's everything, right? Because it's even my feed I think is like a little bit of video games, it's a little bit of photography, it's a little bit of sports. It's trying to think of what else. Boats and water because I like the ocean and stuff. Some fishing in there. And then like random clips of movies, right? You're like, where would I want to watch 27 parts of the first episode of Breaking Bad, but I'll watch part 7. Um, in TikTok real quick and be like, wow, that was such a good show. And I don't even know if that person's making money. I assume they are, who chopped it up and, made it awful, and added caption. It's, yeah, it's such a weird thing, but I think there's that aspect of it. And I think the fact that, there's in my old digital media classes, we would talk about that these platforms are one to many, right? We can post and we can post to many. But I think at the same time, the reason we use them is because it feels like many to one. It feels like we are connected at some level. And I'm not trying to be like, we're not connected. You shouldn't be on your phone. That's not my vibe. I love my phone, so whatever. But is we do feel some sort of um, familiarity, right? Not even connection, but familiarity.
With a
And it's like, this is where we go, right? And I think Instagram, what happened with Instagram, your algorithm is wrong, and they're not showing you your friends.
Yeah.
And so you go, this
What's the
isn't
point?
familiar.
Yeah.
Are my friends not here? And that's the thing. Whereas TikTok is like, hey, we might not even show you your friends, but we're going to show you people who are like you, which is crazy.
And it's a little scary at times.
Yeah, listen, there's so many times when I'll see like a funny video that's like 5 seconds long, and they'll be like, "Oh, this person has the same sense of humor as I do. This is hilarious." But also, validating. I'm like, "Oh, I didn't think anybody thought like that, but they do. Isn't that so sweet?" So kind of a
Yeah.
weird. It's such a crazy. That's what I would say would influence it is the feeling of being there, and all
Yeah.
these companies hire psychologists to help the UX designers design an app that keeps us there.
Yeah.
And
Well, Meta
they do a
needs
good
to work
job.
on it.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like Instagram, I feel like it's probably not floundering by any means, and I feel like a lot of the complaints are by probably less than a fraction of who's on there, but it's especially small business owners, right? We're
Yeah.
like, hey,
We built this up.
yeah, and it's like we're not paying for it. I understand, but we are paying for it with our attention. And like you can sell ads based on how many of us are there, and we're there if we're successful. So make us successful so you can make money.
Right.
Uh,
More
and
people.
exactly, because I think too, especially anybody, a lot of us have been on Instagram for a long time, and I used to tell people, and I used to be this way as well. Like there's a season, probably for 5 years, where I think I was like finding success in my business where maybe I had 5,000 followers on Instagram. So for some people, that's a ton. And then for other people, that's not a lot at all. But I was getting so many inquiries. And what I was telling people was like, hey, what if 5,000 people, you were telling somebody, telling 5,000 people that, what if you were, what would you say to 5,000 people about your business today if you had a second to tell them?
Yeah.
And that really helped. And I think now the mystery is gone. Like, we know that it's only going to be shown to a fraction. Like, it's not even our images are shown to our whole followers and then like only liked by a few. It's getting shown to 10% and then barely liked by 1%.
Right.
And it's just not, as a business, we're wasting our time.
You can't sustain.
Unless you are pushing really hard, unless you grind every day. And I think you'll always get rewarded for what you put out time wise, but I don't know how proportionate it will be time to money, right? Because I think like if you post on an Instagram or spent like 6 hours scheduling on Instagram and making content for it a week, 24 hours a month, that's 3 days of working time. And if you booked one wedding from it, maybe that'd be worth it, but actually not. Like, what could you have spent 24 hours on, that month doing anything else, like meeting with planners, sending meters a spa day, or sending planners a spa day, or working on TikTok? And that's, sorry, I didn't mean to like poop on Instagram, but
no. I think that it's interesting that, because, watching both of them, like, because Instagram has tried now with Reels to like be more TikTok-ish. I think the problem is that you nailed it with, people who decided to follow you are no longer seeing your content, which is like a huge issue. Like a fraction of them see your content on a regular basis. And on TikTok, one of the, I think the best features on TikTok is that there's like, here are your friends. Here's a feed that's just the people you follow. There's an entire feed. Like, you can watch like the things that like the algorithm is picking for you, whatever. But you know what? If you just want to see videos by the people who you follow, there's a whole that is a category that is just like you can just click the like that icon and go there and just watch that stuff. And it tells you, hey, you've got 30 videos by people that you follow that you haven't watched yet. All right. Let's start watching, let's watch some people that I follow and interact with them so that we can see each other just more regularly anyway.
Yeah.
Like that is I think a thing that is missing from like, if Instagram wanted to be more, I don't know, successful with like making it easier for people to see the people that they chose to follow in the first place.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that's, yeah. Hopefully Instagram is listening right now.
Yeah.
And
What's his name?
Mosseri.
Yeah, Mosseri. Like, everybody's like, I just got off the phone with Meta and here's what they told me. And it's like, if they're telling everybody that, maybe they're pushing an agenda. Because it seems like everybody hears the exact same thing. And like, you're not, this is just them like telling you what they want you to tell other people.
Yeah. 100%.
So back to this, like marketing yourself. Are there any particular demographics or segments of the wedding market that you found are particularly receptive to TikTok or similar platforms, or that those that resonate with that particular market?
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, honestly, I think, we're in a transition phase still, right? So at some level, people are on TikTok, but at the same time, not everybody's there.
Mhm.
And so I think, for me personally, a lot of my clientele is apprehensive, or maybe is, they're a consumer, but not a producer there. And then at the same time, maybe they're not looking for, they're not using it as a search engine yet, despite how many people are. Like, I go in there almost every day to look at recipes. It's the easiest, quickest way to be like, tell me the freaking ingredients and tell me how long to set my air fryer for, and then I can get out of there.
It's not the 3 hours of like sorting through a cooking blog post through the story of, the person's car when they were growing up and how they used to drive to like 3 hours away to go to a farm stand to get these ingredients.
Yeah, exactly. And so I got these potatoes without eyes. They were blind. Special potato. No. So I, something I've seen, and I think Brandy's talked about this on her Patreon. So shout out to Brandy. I'm just gushing over Brandy right now. But I believe that the audience is younger, obviously.
Yeah.
And so in a weird world where I know, at least for me, my clientele and where I'm at, like, being a DC, Philly, New York, the audiences, the people getting married are just older, I feel like. So I'm probably in that like 29 to 39 range, 28 to 38 range
Same.
when they're booking, which is older than when I started. I used to shoot when I was 23. I started shooting my friends, and then, your friends can't afford you, and then you're kind of in a spot. And so I, from what I've seen, and even myself, I think I have like one or two couples that I've booked from TikTok, and which is surprising because I haven't been pushing enough in there, but TikTok just helped me find the niche, I guess. Usually younger, kind of more progressive, right? So if you're like a cool, hip person that is like aware of what's happening in the world, or somebody who feels like you belong on TikTok at some level, or at least understand the jokes,
it's a total thing. Like also,
Yeah.
like, it's kind of like Vine back in the day. Like there's like, if you don't get the joke, like, and the thing is, you'll see the joke show up a month later or 2 months later on Instagram, and people will be like, "Oh, this is hysterical," and you're like, sorry, we've moved on from Corn Boy to something else."
Yeah, my wife, she has not committed to TikTok, and which is fine. That's up to her. But she'll send me reels like every day,
Right.
and I'll be like, "Oh, I saw this like 3 months ago, babe. Like, what are you doing?" Or she'll be like, "How'd you find out about that thing?" And I'll be like, "Yeah, TikTok. Like, it happened 10 seconds ago, and now we know." Or like, somebody went live because of cruise ship ran aground,
Right.
and now I want to be like, "Oh, I wonder what a cruise ship app does when it's ran aground." And then you're just watching live for no reason. So, yeah, I think if you kind of feel like you belong, right? Like certain phrases, like if I said in my marketing classes, we used to talk about it's the economy, stupid. And for me, I'm like, I don't even know. I know that phrase is a phrase, but that's something that like my parents' generation would probably understand and be like, okay, we know who said this, and we know, the case behind it. And then for our generation, the millennial generation, there's probably things that we could say and be like, oh yeah, they get that. Or if I'm like, oh yeah, like, bring up an office joke or a friend's joke or something like that, probably, in that realm. And I think now, TikTok, it's just got to be where you're at. But at the same time, similar to a lot of social medias, TikTok has people our age and older who are successful and enjoying it and finding their niche. And the reality, the number one thing I wish I could tell myself better, but I would tell anybody else is this: it's just, hey, somebody out there is doing what you wish you were doing confidently, and they're not as good as you, but they're doing it confidently.
Yeah.
And that's what they're successful, and they're consistent. And it's like, hey, the reality, the sad reality that I need to tell myself, I'm pointing the finger, but 4 fingers are pointed back at me, is that like, this is our job, which I know is unfortunate. Like, marketing is part of running the business of our job, and we should probably put a little bit more effort in.
Yeah, I think there's
in a nice way. That's what the nice way of saying it.
yeah, I agree. I think that there's like, there's a certain amount of like, you have to do it.
Yeah, it can
You
feel that way.
You can't just like, and I suffered from, like, oh, it's got to be perfect before I put it out there.
Yeah.
For a very long time, and let perfect be the enemy of good enough.
Mm-hmm.
So there's just this, like, you have to at least start somewhere, or you're never going to get there. And the I think that a lot of photographers are afraid to put themselves out there because they're worried that they're not going to get good feedback or whatever, or that nobody's going to see it. Like, if nobody sees it, like, what do you mean by nobody? If we've been talking about this again recently, like with a lot of people who are saying that, like, even if you get like 10 likes, that is 10 people telling you, hey, I liked what you did. If you were in a room and 10 people said, hey, I really liked that, like what you just did there, like, how would you feel about that if like 10 people were like standing in front and all of them said like, oh, hey, that was great, man. Hey, good
Right.
job. Like that is something like you don't have to be doing huge numbers,
Yeah.
but you
Yeah.
have to be consistent. It doesn't mean every day. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean like you just have to be consistent in like your approach to it and just keep going. And I've found, again, as someone who doesn't like to appear on camera, the more I've done it, the more comfortable I feel, which is weird because I was an actor, but it's like you're like that's a part that you're playing. And being myself as like a as my and talking about my business or whatever, it's different. It's very different. And I feel more self-conscious for some
Yeah.
reason. And I've found, this is another like just anecdotal experience. One of the things that does really well for me in regards to my business, both like for photographers and for people who want to hire me, is telling the stories behind an image.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this is why I made this decision.
Yeah.
This is what I was thinking when I took this photo. This is
I
what
love
was going on that you can't see is happening in the photo. And I decided to frame this part of it. Like, this is what you know, in like, if it's more of an editorial thing or whatever, like, you know, this is what we were like looking to do, or, you know, this is what the story that I came up with that I wanted to photograph and the project. And this is what it meant. Like giving people that glimpse into your process that isn't just technical, because I think that a lot of photographers fall victim to like, I'm going to show you my camera settings
Yeah. Yeah.
or like, you know, what equipment I used. Like people who are going to hire you don't care.
Yep. Yep.
They want to see like, you know, like why you're making the decisions you're making.
Yeah. No,
And
absolutely.
I think that's a way that people can really, you can find whatever your style is.
Yeah. Here's
You,
the decisions.
yeah, you can connect with the people who want that.
Yeah. No, I think about that all the time. And I think that's like the last few years, that's probably the only business blessing I have out of COVID was I got a really stellar crew of second photographers that were consistent, and I worked with them, almost every month. So it wasn't like, hey, I haven't seen you in a year. It was like, hey, I saw you 2 weeks ago. How's everything go? Whatever. And then photography wise, they both were really good at knowing what I was thinking,
Yeah.
asking what I was thinking. And at the same time, I enjoyed the way that they approached imagery and like how they were bouncing off of me. And we could be complementary, and in a way that says, hey, we're going to deliver both of these images of the same thing because they're different and they're cool and they, match. And I think for clients too, showing that I already want to do this on TikTok. I'm like, okay, I need to post 1 million photos and be like, hey, this is what I was thinking. Is the clients want to know, okay, yeah, I think how this person approaches it is what I would like on wedding day. Because every client, right, no matter what your style is, says, what's your approach? And that's their goal, is finding somebody who your words are matching what they want. Which again, I it's a blessing and a curse that's like, they're not just looking at your pictures, bro. It's not just the
Yeah.
pictures of your Tinder profile. It's the bio and like the Hinge has the audio clips, and they want to get to know you to see if we can move to a second date.
Yeah.
Hopefully shoot a wedding that's awesome and goes well, and then all their friends hire you.
Exactly. Hopefully you get in on the early part of the wave with
Yeah, yeah.
the friends getting married wave. I've managed to do that. I've also been at the end when
Yeah,
like the other person like who shot most of everybody's weddings, and the last couple or two are like, I don't like that photographer. I've seen them at 5 weddings now, and I really don't care for their work, and I want somebody different. So that can happen too. So
I'm always like, when I hear that, I'm always like, oh, there's 6 people and 5 of them have already been married and they use the same photographer. I'm like, well, even though you didn't like him, that person or them, that person made 50 grand off of y'all.
Yeah.
And I'm only going to pick 10, like, come on.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
There's you're sitting there going, oh man. So what advice would you give to photographers who are just starting to explore marketing in a way to like in this kind of new age? Like, I mean, and I say new age, but like it's changed. I've been in the wedding business for more than 20 years. It changes every like 5. Like when I started out, you were taking a physical portfolio around to people, whatever, or you'd meet with people, like show them a book. And that was like the main way you like did it. Then it became like, oh, you had a website.
Yeah.
And then it's like the website was not great. The quality was not good. So like the website just kind of told them, hey, get in touch with me and then we'll get together and look at that book again. And then it was like, it's evolved. It evolves. It's constantly evolving. Um, so don't think that like this is the last time there's ever going to be a change in how people
Totally.
market themselves as photographers or specifically as wedding photographers.
Yeah. No, I think my biggest advice is, for folks either starting out or just needing, I already feel refreshed even in this episode, like kind of thinking about what I need to do and what I need to step up on. But is the number one thing is to be yourself, right? Is I think once I had a lot of mentees that I talked to about this, and if their work was good, everything else was a lot easier to do. So I say, hey, like, if you're not sure if your work is good or solid, and you haven't been working for a few years, like pay the money, find a mentor just to look over your portfolio or to look over what your favorite images are or a full gallery and get feedback, ask for feedback. Like, most people, and it's okay to pay for that because I think that's like going to make you money in the future. And if you can get it for free, get it for free, but you wanted to get it from people you trust and have been on the journey that you want to go on. And I think that's really fun. I've done that for plenty of photographers. And once they know that I'm not there to make them feel bad, I kind of ask them, like, hey, what do you like to shoot? Who are you? What do you want to do? Okay, does your work match that? Right? Because that's what clients are looking for is, does the work match the person I'm going to spend the day with? That's the number one thing I would say is like, once your work is good and to a solid spot, it doesn't have to be amazing, but just to a solid spot where we'd call it professional, whatever that looks like. I'd be yourself in your marketing, right? From the language that you use to how you show yourself. If you want to show a lot of your family, yourself, your life, I think that's totally fine. I've become less weird about that. Obviously there's some risks, if you've got stalker situations or weird situations, you got to process that with safety.
Yeah, you have to measure that according to your own comfort level.
But I think too, I think that's okay, right? Like if you're 25, 30, listen to this, we've got 30 years to do this. And there's not a lot of wedding photographers who have been shooting for a long time. And I think we're going to kind of see what that looks like over the next 10 years, next 20 years of who's going to have a 30-year wedding photography career. It might be you, Casey. It might be like you, Susan Stripling. But I think, be yourself. And I think, don't be afraid. People love an artist's journey. Like when we go to museums and we look at an artist's work, everything is like, hey, this is when this time was happening in the world. This is when this time was happening in their lives. And this is why they created the work like this. And it's like, what are we looking at ourselves and how are we doing that? And I think that is going to be a really useful thing. And so marketing wise, put that everywhere. I think like, don't be shy. Gary Vaynerchuk, for as weird as he can come off, one of my favorite pieces of advice that he has is don't be romantic about how you make your money. Like as long as it's ethical and not, punching down by any means. But if you want to be goofy on a TikTok to make money, great. You want to share your life or vlog or be silly or whatever. I have no issue with that because I think that's okay. As long as it's healthy and not hurting anybody. And again, like I said, like we're on a floating rock going through space.
Yeah.
Like, don't go too serious. This makes me want to dance on TikTok right now, actually, Casey. But it's that'd be my advice. I know that's not very meta, pun intended, as like this is when you should post and this is what you should share and this is what you should look like and you should A/B test. Those things are all great. Trying the same photo with a different caption or a different time of day or with a carousel or not in a carousel, both on TikTok and not, right? Because TikTok supports photos as well. But I think, those things will come. But as long as you're consistent and posting and treat it like a business or treat it like a weekly meeting or a 3 days a week meeting. Hey, I've got my TikTok meeting this week. I got to go show up at 11 and figure out what to do, right? Like I already love the idea of sharing your images and people love that. Photographers love that and art people love that. Like random people on the street that's the one thing I like about our culture, millennial and younger than us, is we love, I say nerdy, but that has like a negative connotation. But I think like we love, but not the Nerdy Photographer Podcast, of course.
Of course not.
We love an intentionality behind something, right? You're like, Adam, tell me why you bought those shoes. I'd be like, well, let me tell you a story, right? Like because we are intentional purchasers, right? Whether it's organic or grass fed or cage free or whatever, or we don't care about that stuff. Either way, we're making a decision. We are intentional about a lot of the things in our lives. And I think that can be really fun. And I think that's, we can have a place to show that. And as long as you show up with intentionality and consistency, we've seen the rewards, like people we've mentioned, Brandy and Margaret and other folks on TikTok and other people who've had success. And so it's like, hey, there's a place for you. That's the one thing too, is like, as much as I think there's not any cake left, there's plenty of cake left. And
there's more. There's always more cake.
Yeah.
More than I can possibly consume.
There we go.
Yeah. I think that's really one of the things you mentioned, like, how artists evolve as well. And I've blown the minds of I'm a jaded Gen Xer. But like people who are, younger millennials and Gen Z, and, talking to them about like art and like, hey, you're going to change. You're just going to you're going to change.
Yeah.
You're going to do you're going to feel like at some point, like maybe you want to shoot things differently, and that's okay. And like show like Picasso paintings from, and they're like, but not telling them like from his early on in his career, like when he was very like, it was realism. And then there was, like different, he went through different styles, and they're like, wait, this is the same person.
Yeah.
Like, this is the guy that I'm used to like seeing, like, oh, it's an eye and a nose, and like the cubist. They're like so used to like seeing the cubist stuff that they don't realize that he went through this whole progression of different styles.
Yeah.
And periods in his life. And it's just like, oh, well, I only ever heard about this thing. Like, well, yeah, like but like that's what people know him for now. But he went through all these other phases and ended up there. That's just like that was like part of his destination. Like you're allowed to grow and evolve and change and, be different.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's so funny because I'm probably a hypocrite when it comes to music. I'm like, this album wasn't my favorite. They're going in a different direction when it comes to like a musician. But like visual art, I'm like, no, like this person, and I should give it to musicians. Everybody's going through something different at a different time, and thus producing different kind of art. And I think like kind of like we said, the last 5 years, I'm probably producing the most boring wedding photography of my entire life. But I'm happier coming home, like if the couple's pumped and we connect. And I always say my goal is to get invited to Thanksgiving, like to really connect so much, to where like a family adopts me. My wife and kid will be like, where are you going, Dad? But I think it's, that's my goal, is connecting with people. That's part of my like larger personal mission in life, is connecting and, learning about people and, trying to make them feel loved. And I think when it comes to photography and stuff like that for me, that gives me a breath of relief to where the look doesn't matter. The flash, the flash in the pan, not the actual flash, but also flash.
Also flash.
Yeah, the trends don't matter to me as much in the sake of what my clients are looking for. And at the same time, I also don't mind leaning into trends because that look doesn't discredit my mission, if that makes sense. Like we're getting very deep here, but that's probably like the last thing I would say is like, yeah, like your work aligns with your mission, and as your work can change, as long as it stays with your mission, like that's the goal. And if you can market that, you'll be totally fine.
Hey there, Nerdy Photo Crew. There's one thing you should never be caught without as a professional photographer, and that's a good contract, both for dealing with your clients and dealing with subcontractors that you may work with along the way. Be sure to head over to nerdyphotographer.com and go to our shop and find our contract templates for portrait photography, event photography, wedding photography, as well as dealing with second photographers, associate photographers, and any other subcontractors that you might have. Check it out and keep your business safe. Photographers, it's time to revolutionize your workflow with Aftershoot. Imagine culling through thousands of images in a matter of minutes, effortlessly flagging blurry shots and closed eye pictures. Now you can stop imagining and meet your new photography sidekick, Aftershoot, the game-changing AI photo culling and editing software. Say goodbye to hours spent sifting through images, as Aftershoot's AI can cull thousands of photos in just a few minutes, grouping together similar shots and flagging those blurry or closed eye pics. I have been using Aftershoot for a little over a year, and I have to say, it has transformed the workflow on the portrait side of my business, culling and organizing my photos from family portrait sessions to corporate headshots in a matter of minutes. For engagements, events, and weddings, it does a great job as a first pass cull for me, since I like to go through and make sure I didn't miss anything, but those family and group photos are all solidly organized together, and that saves me so much time. You can also make your artistic vision a reality. Aftershoot's automated AI editing is customizable to your unique style. Edit thousands of images in just a few clicks, achieving consistency and brilliance effortlessly. Sign up now at nerdyphotographer.com/recommends/aftershoot and experience the Aftershoot advantage with your first month free. Transform your workflow and transform your business. Go to nerdyphotographer.com/recommends/aftershoot or click the link in the episode notes and free up time for what you love by letting AI handle the heavy lifting so you can focus on capturing moments and not sorting through them.
Hey, hey, hey! And now for my favorite part of the show. What's that say? Useless information. This is always death.
This came to me because you earlier mentioned Dan Campbell, so I know you have at least some familiarity with football. Legendary San Francisco 49ers quarterback Steve Young can trace his lineage directly back to George Washington. True or false?
Oh. I mean, it's so weird. I got to say true, right?
It's false.
Okay.
He can trace his lineage back to Brigham Young.
BYU. That makes sense.
Yep. Because he went to BYU, but like that, the Brigham Young, Steve Young, direct relation. That is
that's wild.
It is crazy. The other one I was trying to choose between that was that also Led Zeppelin wrote multiple songs about Lord of the Rings.
Is that true?
Yeah.
I'm a big Zeppelin guy, so that's so funny.
Battle Forevermore, Ramble On, and trying to remember what the third one is. Misty Mountain Hop.
In the world, that's one of my theories, or one of my I think the way kids say is like, what could you do a 40-minute PowerPoint presentation on right now with no prep? And it's probably that everything is everything, because it's just like we talked about, so much art is connected, and we don't, and I feel like pre-internet, more was connected than we could ever know because there was less apparent, if you will.
Yes, it wasn't obvious connection. It wasn't a prima facie connection.
Yeah. And I think people too they think Lord of the Rings, they think the movie. I at the very least, I've never read the books, but I know that they're older and pre-Zeppelin, so that makes sense to me. And that there was some Star Wars. The guy who wrote Star Wars didn't like J.R.R. Tolkien, from what I've heard.
George Lucas.
Yeah. Yeah, or at least the original story.
You mean Joseph Campbell?
Maybe
the guy who wrote The Hero's Journey.
Okay. Yeah. And then now I, having just seen Dune 2, a month ago, and loved it, watched it 4 times. We have one of the 17 big IMAX theaters here where I live now, one of the 77 millimeters, and it was incredible.
I'm guessing that sandworm scene was like that. I was like, what? I went to the knockoff, big screen.
Yeah.
That's not an actual IMAX. I can only imagine what that was like in IMAX.
It was
those movies were visually brilliant. I've appeared on other podcasts talking about Dune. I'm a huge Dune fan. I've read the books when I was very young, and I continue to go back and reread the first 4. Everything after the 4th one is kind of especially anything written by Frank Herbert's kid. Don't bother reading it. It's nuts. But the first 4 books are incredible. I feel like they should be taught in schools. They heavily into economics,
Sociology.
sociology, propaganda, all sorts of like really uh, intellectual pursuits that like would make you richer. Like when you actually see them very straight. I don't know if you've ever read the books for that. I highly, people kept asking me like, what did you think of the movies? And I'm like, they are visually stunning. I have a little bit of trouble with the way Villeneuve like did the storytelling because he like brought certain elements in and then just completely forgot about them. And there's also like so much going. You can't bring everything from a book in, but like choosing like specifically what you're going to do,
Right.
and like I do not expect any adaptation to like fully live up to a book. But like, and you're making your own interpretation. But I was like, oh, he brought this thing in here, and then he just seems to have forgotten about it. Like, why'd you even bring it in the first place? Unless you were going to make a big deal out of it. So yeah, like my friends who know me were like, oh, what'd you think of the movie? And I'm like, I like both of those movies were just visually incredible. Like that was like the thing that just blew me away. It like made me feel like I was in that world. But a lot of that stuff, like speaking of Star Wars, a lot of Star Wars was stolen from Dune. Like George Lucas admits it.
Yeah. I just learned about that. My thing I'll ask you about Dune real quick. And this is me this is like barely trying to nerd out, but I heard when I watched Dune 2, the second one, I think for the most part, I'm like, okay, yeah. Like Paul is I'm like, yeah, he's the protagonist and is the hero and maybe a little bit / anti-hero developing throughout Dune 2. But what I've heard from a lot of people who are, more into Dune, if you will, is that Paul is kind of an a-hole, and Dune 2, the movie, is like showcasing in a funny way, not in a comedic way by any means, but like in a funnier-ish way, that hey, this person we might not want in power, actually, right? Because on first look, you want him in power because you're like, oh, the movie is telling me that, oh, I'm glad this guy can ride the worm or whatever it is. But then, sorry, spoiler alert, but it's been out for a while. But towards the end, you go, I don't know, like this guy's cool, but also might be bad news, right? Because he's, and I go both ways. On one hand, I'm like, I don't know the story, so I'm like, oh, maybe he's becoming this so that he can do what he set out to do, and at the same time,
you're closer to what I don't want to spoil anything because they're also talking about like maybe making more movies.
Dune
because
Messiah.
the Dune Messiah, Children of Dune. We'll see if they keep going. The fourth book, God Emperor of Dune, kind of finishes the Atreides saga, in my opinion. Which and everything after that just feels kind of like odd. Like they could have like I don't know. Frank Herbert was, like is mentally like not all together at that point when he was writing those books. And then his son like wrote more books, like finished off the series like from his notes, not in the way that Christopher Tolkien did with J.R.R. Tolkien's work, like finishing out like unfinished stories, but just like writing new things. Again, first 4 books, fantastic. It tells this whole story of like what the future that Paul actually sees and he is trying to avoid. And I don't want to like say anything about it because it will give away a lot of things, but there is a reason he chooses to be the way that he is to accomplish something because he wants to avoid something else.
Yeah.
That would be worse.
Right. Which they allude to. Yeah. For sure.
And like there's a lot of that, like, and one of the things I like about the different books is because like Herbert like looked at it and was like, oh, like, oh, this is how people responded to this, but I kind of want them to get this. So you kind of get a different perspective. Like the books are told from different perspectives, purposefully. Like you're just like seeing like the first book, which we saw in the movies, the 2 movies, Dune 1 and Dune 2, is the first book. The second book is like told from a different perspective, and you see Paul in a different light. I think Villeneuve was trying to incorporate some of that into it, but I think he also missed out on some other things. spoiler for people who have not read the books, there's a lot more going on in Paul and Chani's relationship in the book. They're together for 6 years. And one of the things I didn't like about Villeneuve's interpretation of this is he like shortened everything way down. Like into obviously less than 9 months because his mom still hasn't had the baby yet. Like in the book, she has the baby. His sister Alia, who is fully from birth, like coherent, like fully conscious in the womb, and then is like everybody calls her an abomination because she's coming out talking and like has powers, from birth. Which I think would be a little weird, but like you got to find like do that. But like he shortened down the time frame so much that Paul and Chani's relationship doesn't change. Like doesn't. At the end of the movie, there's a lot of friction between the two of them,
Right.
and that whole scene also is handled differently in the book. Like in the movie, you're kind of like, oh, like he's just like he's such a jerk. In the how he's doing this, and it's all like for his own glory or whatever. In the book, he clearly states his intentions to everyone. Like in the room, he's just like, hey, by the way, there's like no, he doesn't like veil why he's doing these. Like, I'm going to marry Princess Arulin just because it's political marriage.
Yeah.
We're not going to have kids. We're not going to have a relationship.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's like there's no like, oh, I'm disrespecting Chani. It's a whole other thing. Now I can just go on for this hours. Obviously, it's something that that's something I could give a presentation on.
I love it.
Well, Adam, where can people find you online on the interwebs, social medias? Where can people find your work and follow along with you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I appreciate it. So I would say go on TikTok. I don't have many followers on there at all. And my content.
Add you right now.
Yeah, I love it. That'd be awesome. Is the Mason Photography because I joined TikTok a few years ago with Mason Photography and I actually lost it. So the Mason Photography on Instagram. It's just Mason Photography. That's where I'm at all the time. So feel free to DM me and let me know what you thought about anything you heard on the show. Those are the two best places to chat with me. If you're interested in any education or anything like that, I've got a Facebook group called Fulfilled Photographers that has some live workshops that are free. Some of the stuff we talked about, a lot of lead generation, that kind of stuff. But love talking with photographers. And hopefully we will all be marketing a little bit better this week after hearing.
After listening to this. And I will include all of those links in the episode notes. So if you didn't quite catch everything, go into the episode notes and just click on the links in there and follow along with Adam. Oh, hey, welcome back. Many thanks to Adam Mason for being on the show. Be sure to check out his links in the episode notes. While you're at it, you can follow along on the social medias, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, Reddit, at The Nerdy Photo. All one word, no underscores, dots, or dashes, at The Nerdy Photo. Tell us what you think about this or any other episode. Leave your photography-related questions or tell us what topics you would like to hear about in future episodes. And be sure to subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already. And leave a review and or tell a friend about the show. And or preferably, but possibly or. Okay, Fib, let's focus on the clock, sewing machine, and camera platforms for now. Those seem to have the greatest reach.
I will proceed accordingly.
Until next time, everybody, stay safe and stay nerdy.
Who's that coming back to town? You better start listening. Who's your heart been beating about? You better listen.